Hello, I am Michael Sullivan, and I'm with Life Model Works, and I'm here today with the Reverend Kitty Wilder. Hi, Kitty.
Hi, Michael.
We are talking about the stages of maturity. We're kind of halfway through,
Mhm.
and this is the chat about uh, the adult stage of
Mhm.
maturity. And
Right.
I was thinking of the Apostle Paul as I was preparing for this, and where he says in this great chapter, right, 1 Corinthians 13, which is the chapter on love, and it's
Mhm.
actually a description of Hesed love
Yes.
because the Greek word didn't really fully describe the Hebrew word
Mhm.
hesed. And so Paul goes into 1 Corinthians 13 with all of this description of what a deeper kind of love really is about. And then at the end of it, he says, when I was a child, I thought and I spoke and I reasoned as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And,
Mhm.
and so I think it's just interesting that it's tied into this love chapter, which Life Model Works is all about this deeper understanding and experience of not only God's love, but love for one another and love for people. And in that context, he talks about maturing, like
Yes.
putting away childish things. That's really what we're after here in this kind of unfolding of a teaching that you have been engaged in for a long, long time, teaching on these stages of maturity. So,
Right.
so tell us about the adult stage.
Okay, the adult stage starts at the age of 13, and that's probably quite shocking to many people because we kind of label that as being the tweens, the beginning of adolescence. But the adolescence only came about in the Industrial Revolution. And so that in America, that is the only place where you find adolescence. And it ends up being kind of an in-between kind of a stage of life that where the young people have way too much energy and no real good tasks to do.
Mm,
So it's very helpful if we start teaching them and training them as young adults while they're still in the safety of our homes with parents, that they can be learning how to manage things, how to make decisions. And if they make mistakes, this is a safe place to fall
yeah.
rather than being out on their own and now all of a sudden being given adult tasks and collapsing on their own and ended up having to come back to mom and dad. So anyhow, that's the beginning of adulthood. And so it goes from 13 up until you have your first child when you enter the parent stage.
And a lot of cultures have, instead of just kind of this nebulous coming into adulthood, they have rites of passage. And I
Right.
know there are a lot of Christian people who have returned to the rite of
Yeah.
passage as a way of
Right.
marking more specifically, hey, you're entering into the young adult community
Hmm.
now, you're entering into the adult community as a young adult.
Right.
And
Right.
so this can help young people really find much greater sense of purpose and meaning when the
Hmm.
adult community does that.
Yes, yeah. And that's one of the first things on our list here. It says, I've had a rite of passage into adulthood by the community. And so we need to be able to bring that back into our culture of how do we welcome the young ladies into the group of women and the young men into the group of men. And so oftentimes we've not had that, but we can always reinstate that later in life. I am comfortable relating to the same sex community. So, whatever sex we are, we know how to relate to the older ones in that same community. We have relationships. And I have a peer group where I belong. We know our identity group. We know that we fit into this, the group that is our age. I can partner with others. Now, that's a big one. Learning how to be a team player, learning how to be able to work out things with other people. My relationships are marked by fairness and mutual satisfaction. Now, when we're a child, we need someone to take care of us. I mean, an infant, we need someone to take care of us. The child, we learn how to take care of ourselves. But now at adulthood, we learn how to take care of ourselves, plus one or more other people, so
Mm,
that we're all mutually satisfied. So you go and look at like car salesmen or different jobs like that. Is one trying to up and get a better deal? We want to end those deals with we're both mutually satisfied. I sold a car, They bought a car.
Mm.
We both got a good agreement. That would be adult maturity. And so we can relate that in so many areas of life. And in that mutual satisfaction too, when we're in a marriage relationship, if we are both at adult level maturity, then we know how to make sure both of us are satisfied. It's not a win, you win sometimes and I win sometimes, but we can both get to a mutual satisfaction. And so when couples come in for counseling, if there's strife, we know to look that there's some holes in the infant and child maturity because they've not learned to get to the place where they can get to that mutual satisfaction. So I protect others from my power when necessary. Now, when my husband took our sons on their father-son trips, he taught them about how adolescents, the junior high, use their power to try and, keep people out, develop cliques and all that. That is, a use of power that is not necessary. And so how to protect people from the power that we have, how to take care of others. But we want to obliterate that adolescent stage too, even though I mentioned it again there. But it's so ingrained in our American culture, but it's not the stages of maturity. I protect my personal and group identity when boundaries are violated. So we're learning how to take care of others. And up until this stage of life, we're very interested in taking care of ourselves. But once we get to this adult stage, we're very interested in taking care of our identity group. I live in a way that expresses my heart. Who did God make me to be? And so I'm able to start living out of that expression and becoming all that God created me to be. I have a diverse set of roles and responsibilities. Now, this is more than just chores, but we take on, looking after other siblings, other kids are doing babysitting jobs. We're just looking out for the community. We're learning how to protect, be protectors rather than predators.
Yes.
And I make important contributions to my family and community. Now, this one's missing a lot from the young people, the young adults, and they need to be able to be aware of that. And I think in some groups, some families and some other denominations or like the Mormons, they do a very good job on that, in that the young people are the ones that are sent out as missionaries. They have an important mission to be able to accomplish. And so they give him, important jobs to the young adults. And sometimes that's, been like, that has been very helpful, whereas a lot of our Protestant missionary groups will go out and after they've had children, and then they send them away to boarding schools, or the kids are separated from the parents, and there's so much unhappiness and difficulty with kids growing. So doing some of that missionary work when they're young adults, when they have all this energy, that's a good placement of that energy.
History is kind of full of stories of very young people who have done amazing things to change the world.
Right. And it reminds me of a couple of times of stories. We were told about a church in the East Coast that needed a new church property. And so they thought, we'll have the youth group be the ones that go and look for this property. So they told the young adults what all they needed in the new church property and said, now you go and talk to these different realtors and see what you can come up with. Well, as they went to the realtors like, are you kidding? Why aren't the other older people coming to, talk about this with us? They said, so no, they've assigned us the job. So they went around with the realtors and they found a suitable location with what all the requirements were, and they brought it back to the church board, and the church board relocated there. Well, they had a real important sense of their community. They had been the ones that had found this.
Yes.
And
we like to say a lot of times the youth are not the future of the church. They are the church.
That's right. Yeah. And then in another situation, my husband does not like shopping for cars. And at one point, our oldest son had just turned 16, so he had his car license, or driving license, and we needed a new van to be able to pull a camper. So he gave him all the specifications of what we needed. And And so, of course, being a new driver, he was eager to go around to all these car lots and look at cars and talk with them all. And so he came back and he told his dad, he said, I found the van that you're looking for. And so Jim went down, test drove it. He says, yep, you found it. We took it
Yeah.
home that day, and we even headed out on a camping trip that day.
Woo!
And so such
Way to go,
delight.
son.
Yeah, such delight being in the car, because he was pointing out all the features of the van and stuff, but it gave him an important job to do that was extremely helpful.
Yes, life-changing for him, I'm sure.
Right. Yes. And so then let's going down the list, I can bring 2 or more people back to joy at the same time.
Hmm.
So it carries on with that mutual satisfaction that it's not just my delight or my pleasure or what brings me, satisfaction, but I can help you and we, 1 or more people. I use my sexual power wisely. And so we see that a lot with the young gals, particularly wearing skimpy clothes. They are not protecting their sexual power very well. They're using it in ways that is not very helpful to them. And so being able to, protect others from our sexuality is a very important aspect that our culture doesn't do very well. And I can proclaim my spiritual identity, who I am, how I came to know Jesus, how I fit in this church group, how I live to be who God created me to be. And I can see others through the eyes of heaven. So as an infant, we've needed others to see us through the eyes of heaven. As a child, we start to see ourselves as how God sees us, and now we can see others through the eyes of heaven. So going through that list, it is the adult stage. Now, as people are looking at our resource center, they'll probably see this pre-marriage checklist for men down at the bottom here.
That sounds intriguing.
And it's a list for men because typically men can look at a list for themselves and apply it to them. But if it's written to women, they don't know how to apply it. Women have the capability of being able to look at a list or a book that's written to men and be able to know how to apply it to themselves. Little difference in the sexuality there of men and women. So this one is written to men, but it's applicable to women too. Just adapt it for any of the women that are listening. So before marriage, we want to make sure we've reached adult maturity and our labors are productive. I give life to others with style. I've experienced life as a brother, a friend, a priest, a lover, a warrior, a king, a servant. All of these together were the same person over time. So just want to address that as briefly as possible, but the adult stage is where we really want to be when we go to get married and be able to have a satisfying marriage.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of growth there and a lot of helpful guidelines on how we as adults need to function.
As I think about the characteristics of these stages of maturity, I think, okay, so how does this help us? And I think one of the main ways it helps us is that it helps us to be self-aware. So I've found through the years that self-awareness is a real gift from God, whenever it comes. And so these are just so insightful in terms of the specifics of how they apply to each stage. And then also, when you're self-aware, then you're more mindful. And so when you're mindful that you are exhibiting that characteristic, or maybe mindful you're not exhibiting that characteristic, just that mindfulness, this teaching and this insight just provides that, I think, in a very cool way. And also, as I think about the various characteristics of the stages of maturity, I think about how this could be great conversations, because we don't go off in a corner to get them in isolation. We need others to communicate with and to bounce things off of and talk about our struggles and where we've been lacking, and also where we've had victories and where we've overcome things and where other people have overcome. And if we tell our stories to each other of struggle and overcoming, then we get that equipment on the inside that we need in order to break through into new levels of maturity.
And how helpful this would be if youth groups were going through this to help them realize you're young adults we're not just spending time with ski trips and pizza parties and
Right.
stuff. We're actually making sure that all of us reach adulthood so that when we find our life partner, we can go into this as an adult.
Yeah. And I think another important theological point of all of this too is that a lot of times Christians think, oh, well, Christians are supposed to mature, but what about other people? What about people that aren't Christians? And I think that the Bible, if you really look at it clearly, it values the maturity of all people. And
Yes,
we
this
should,
is a human task for everyone.
it
Yeah.
is, and it comes out of a robust, what I call a creation theology. Like
Mm,
everybody needs to grow up, everybody needs to be mature, and we
yeah.
need to, and we even people that aren't followers of Jesus, they can mature too, and actually it
Yes.
can become a very powerful evangelistic experience where we share how people mature with people that haven't come to Christ yet. It can be a great inroad into winning their hearts to the Lord.
Right. And sometimes even ones that are not in church are some of the better ones that help mentor you, because as we know, the church is not a healthy place. It's a place where we bring wounded people to Jesus and help them. We often talk about in hopeless despair. This is a hospital for people to come and find out somebody who has all the time and resources to help them.
Yeah.
And so looking to our community and people that are not necessarily in our church can sometimes be good mentors for helping us mature.
Yes, absolutely. Because they're created by God and
Yes.
they've matured, and so we can learn from people who haven't come to faith yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to learn from people who haven't come to faith yet. That's
Mm-hmm.
that robust creation theology. And then the life model also has a robust redemption theology that we need God's help too
Yes.
in order to mature. So
Yes.
it's just a good blend, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
this particular teaching on the stages of maturity and the stages of maturity, I think that it fits in well with those two emphases of our theology.
Yes.
So, well,
Sounds good.
Kitty, it's been great having another chat with you. And
Thank you.
the next chat, we're going to move on to the parent stage, right?
Right.
All
Yes.
right. Well, we want to encourage everybody to hit our website, lifemodelworks.org, and there's some free resources there. Uh,
Yes.
and then we're going to pick up our next chat very soon. So
Okay. Thank you,
thanks.
Michael.
Have a good day.
Later.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.